Good afternoon and welcome to the Quartix webinar on system configuration. My name is Alison Ashley, here I am, and I'll be hosting the session this afternoon. I'm part of the customer resources team here at Quartix and we're scheduled for around 30 minutes. It's likely to be slightly longer this afternoon than the previous webinar. We have quite a few menu options to get through. I'm not alone this afternoon. I'm accompanied by my colleague Jess Banks from the sales team, who I'll introduce to you later. She will be hosting the question and answer session. It would be great to get your feedback this afternoon and your questions. And on the screen here, you can see the section where you should post them. It should be somewhere towards the right-hand side of your screen. So please post all your comments and questions as we go along, or you can save them up to the end if you're listening in the box, and we'll try and get back to you on the webinar live, or if not, if there's not time, if we run out of time, as I say, there's quite a lot to get through, then we'll come back to you afterwards. During the webinar this afternoon, I'm going to use a live demonstration of our system to show you the changes that you can make to customize the system and make it more relevant for your business so you can have more or less information. If you are a system administrator, when you're logged in, you will have a configuration option on your menu. So what I'm going to do is flip over to the live screen now and show you what the screen will look like. Okay. Right, we're back to the menu here. So if you are logged in as an administrator, you will have this option here, the configuration option. That means that you're the administrator of the system and you're able to make the changes that I'm going to run through with you this afternoon. If you don't have this option, then you're going to have user passwords, which will enable you to view the information. So you can track all of your vehicles, you can look at the reports, but you just can't make any changes on the system. We do recommend that you keep the number of administrators of the system to a minimum, because you could end up overwriting each other's changes. So depending on the size of your organization, you might want just 1 or 2 administrator users. If you require administrator passwords and you don't have them, then we would request that you email in writing to us, to our system support team, and there will be some email addresses coming up at the end where you can send your request to. We will only issue passwords to authorized users on the account, and we would probably copy in the current system administrator as well, so that you would know that there are a couple of people who have administrator rights. Okay, right, so we've got a lot to get through, so I'm going to make a start. I'm going to click into the configuration menu and run through the options here. The first couple may not apply to you, or the first one in particular may not apply to you very often. If we click on here, we've got edit company details. So in here we've got the company name and address. So it's only if you ever change your company name or your address, if you move offices, you might want to change that in there. So it's not very often that you're going to go in there. So I'm going to go straight back to the menu. And the second option down, now this one only applies if you have driver ID enabled. So I click in here, you can see we've got no driver ID enabled on this particular account that we're looking at. If you have got driver ID enabled, what you will see on here, on this drop down list here, is a list of unallocated tags. What you can do, you'll probably know all about this if you have driver ID with us, but we issue tags per driver so that they can identify themselves as being the driver of the vehicle by attaching their fob to a magnetic reader in the vehicle. If there are any unallocated tags, then you can allocate them in here to your drivers. So you can bring up the tag number and you would get a drop down list where you can actually type the driver's details into there. So I'm going to move on, not spend too much more time on that. If we go back to the configuration menu, and the third option down is edit group details. Now, we briefly touched on this during my last webinar where we had timesheets. Basically, you can have groups set up so that you have a manager who looks after just a particular group of vehicles and is only responsible for those. So he's not interested in any of the other vehicles at all. He can just view his group. So what you can do is, once the groups are set up, you can actually move the vehicles from group to group. So we've got the sales vehicles here. That's the name of the group here, and currently in that group we've got these 2 registration numbers, but it also lists the other registration numbers in your fleet that you might want to move across. So you can drag those across, or likewise you can take the BK66 out of the group. The below bit here is for drivers, so if you had driver ID enabled, you could actually have groups with particular drivers in there. Also in this option here, if you joined me again for the timesheets webinar, you can enable the daily group spreadsheet. So if you wanted to enable that, you can specify which time of day you want to receive it. You can put your email address in there and it will email it to you automatically every day for that group of vehicles. If you want a recording, incidentally, of the previous webinar, I've mentioned it a couple of times now on timesheets, then there will be some email addresses coming up at the end where you can request that. Okay, right, any questions on that? Then please do type in the comments box and we will get to you at the end. I'm going to move on the menu. And the 4th option down here, there's a fair bit to go through in this one, is edit standard vehicle details. Okay, so we're in the sales group and I'm going to pick on Andy here and say OK. And you'll see all sorts of information that we can change here, including the registration number. That is actually a new addition. We've actually given you self-serve rights to change your registration number yourself if you want to, rather than have to email our support team. So that's a good thing. We are making it a lot more streamlined, the system, for you to use. And you've got the description of the vehicle here, which you can change. You've got the start shift time, which defaults to midnight. You've got the new trip threshold, which is 250 meters. So basically what that means is if there are any trips that are less than 250 meters, the system will filter them out on your logs. So again, on the timesheets that we covered last time, if there are any small movements around a yard, which is less than 250 meters, they will be filtered out. Okay, we have show stop events. So again, referring back to the timesheets, if your vehicle pauses for more than 2 minutes, then it will show as idling on your logs. It will show as a stop with the ignition on. So you can enable that in here or disable that in here. The standard setting is around 2 minutes, but if you wanted to adjust that up, if for instance you were working in an area which was heavily sort of congested, then you might want to adjust that up because your driver may be stopping at traffic lights or just the general congestion of things. He might be sort of stationary for a while. So we can amend that for you. We've got the estimated fuel consumption. Now that's based on the mileage that the vehicle does. So you can adjust that here to get a more accurate figure on your weekly spreadsheet. You may notice if you receive the weekly spreadsheet, we estimate the fuel consumption on there for you. So it's based on a calculation using this estimated fuel consumption here. So if you're operating a fleet of HGVs, for example, you might want to adjust that down to 13 miles per gallon or something. Okay, and moving down, we've got Andy, who's part of the sales group. He could be part of another group as well if you want. We do have the ability to have each vehicle in up to 3 groups. So if there were another manager who was looking after him and they wanted to view his data as well, he could belong to their group of vehicles as well. Okay, moving down to the live tracking. This is how the live tracking presents on the screen. So you have the option to put initials on the vehicle if you want. I'm just going to put my initials in there. And you can change the symbol that appears on the live tracking as well. So at the moment we've got a grey saloon as shown down here. If we give him, let's give him a brightly coloured vehicle or something so that we notice the change. If we give him a pink lorry, You'll see it change there, and we'll hop into the live tracking in a moment and have a look at the live tracking screen so that you can see that it is changed there too. Okay, further down the screen here, we've got the daily vehicle logs and the weekly spreadsheets, which are topics that, again, we covered in our timesheet webinar. So they're not enabled at the moment, but if you wanted to enable them, you can specify which time of day you want to receive them, the email address, if you want somebody CC'd into them as well, you can put their details in there. And then any changes that you make on here, if you just update at the bottom, and it will make those changes live. So if, for instance, we go into the live tracking now, and if we have a look at Andy's vehicle here and say, okay, we'll see him on the map as a pink van. And I must remember to change that back. I'm sure he wouldn't approve of a pink van there. Okay, right. If we go back to the menu and we go back to configuration, okay, and we pick the next option down here, which is edit user preferences, okay, and say okay. Right, the most significant thing in here is you now have the ability, I mentioned before, to change your passwords. So if you are logged in, obviously you need to put your current password in there, and then you need to type your new password that you want to change it to twice to confirm, and then update. You have some options here as well for a widescreen layout. That's where the layout of the screen is. You'd have the mapping towards the left-hand side, and then the log of where the vehicles are towards the right-hand side of the screen on the live tracking. You can also show initials with the vehicle descriptions. Okay. Any questions on what I've gone through so far, then please keep posting. Right, I'm going to go back to the menu and select the next option down. So the next option down we have here is edit vehicle management data. Okay, and I'm going to pick one of the vehicles. I'm not going to pick Andy this time. I'm going to pick the Audi driver and say okay. Right, so the system defaults on the odometer reading to miles. You can have it in kilometres. We've got a Quartix odometer estimate. Now, the estimate is based on the cumulative mileage that the vehicle has done since we put this manual odometer reading in here. Okay, and then we've got the date that the reading was taken, the next service date due. So this information, if you put this in here, it actually saves the need to keep timesheets manually. So the system can alert you of MOT and servicing dates, and we have a couple of customizable milestones in here as well. So if, for instance, you wanted to know, we've got milestone 2, a name milestone, we've called it tyres, and the next tyre change would be due in 82,000 miles. So you have some name ones, and you also have like the standard ones with MOT and road tax and insurance filled in here. You'll notice that the next service due date has gone well overdue. We'll go on to run the MOT and service report now. If I go back to the menu, and it's in fleet management, and it's MOT and service date report, this one here. And if I bring up the vehicle, okay, I've got both vehicles here in the group. You'll see that it was the first one, and you'll see what it's done on this report is it's highlighted in red that the next service has gone overdue, and also the insurance as well. What it does is it notifies you in amber when it's either a month away from its milestone. So if it's a date milestone that you've set there, it will come up in amber on this report. If it's a month away, or if it's an odometer milestone, then it's when it's 1,000 miles away, it will come up in amber. And then obviously when it goes overdue, it turns to red. So so it's a very useful little feature there. I know that our customers, from speaking to many people, they do use this, and they're able to do away with their manual timesheets. So I hope you find that useful. Okay, right, I'm going to go back to the menu. Okay, and back into configuration, and the next option down is edit vehicle privacy details. So I'm going to go in there and select the Audi driver again and say OK. All right, so the system defaults to 24-hour standard monitoring unless you tell it otherwise. I know that some people allow their drivers to use their vehicles outside of our hours, so you might want to enable privacy for your drivers if they're allowed to do that. But as I say, the system will track 24/7 unless you tell it otherwise. So it's in here that you can actually specify the working hours that you want to monitor your vehicles. We've got some already set up in here, but you can actually add more than one monitoring period during the day if you want to. So we're currently using our weekday monitoring that we've already set up, which might be 9 to 5. But if you want to add another monitoring period, then you can put the start time and end time in here, and it will monitor during that period. Okay, what it does when the vehicle is actually not monitoring, when it is in privacy, it will still record the data for the mileage, but it doesn't record where the vehicle has been. So if you do allow your drivers to use their vehicle, say at weekends, and they want privacy, they don't want you to know where they've been, but obviously they're still liable for their private mileage, then the private mileage will come out on your weekly spreadsheet. So it does still monitor the mileage. Just going back up to the top here, you can put it into privacy, as I've mentioned before. You can say no monitoring as well. So if your driver is on holiday, you can actually put it into no monitoring. The can extend monitoring and can shorten monitoring. If you enable those, it means that if your driver has the privacy app on his phone, he can actually extend or shorten the mileage, sorry, the monitoring period if he wants to. Okay, you've actually given him rights to do that. Okay, right, moving on then. Back to the menu. Okay, and we're on to geofencing. Now, some of you may know what geofencing is already, but just for the benefit of those of you who don't, geofencing is like drawing an imaginary kind of irregular shape, a polygon, around a certain area. Now that area can be made to be mandatory or prohibited. For example, the London congestion zone, we have that geofenced, and we make it a prohibited zone so that every time one of your vehicles goes in, you can be alerted that it's gone in. And with maybe a mandatory zone, if you were a local authority and you didn't expect your vehicles to go outside of the county boundaries, you can make it a mandatory zone and be alerted if your vehicle comes out of that area. Now, a geofence can be active for certain hours of the day and also for just certain vehicles only as well. So you can make it very specific depending on what your needs are. Another example might be that you might want to geofence people's home addresses. You don't expect them to go home during the day, so you could make that a prohibited one. Obviously, if they work close by and nipped home for their lunch break, that's fine. But if during sort of normal core hours you wouldn't expect them to go home, you might want to geofence that. So let's just have a little play around with the screen then and see how it works. So what you can do to draw your polygon, basically you just start clicking on the screen and you'll get points come up, and you can move these points around, draw any shape that you want to. So any area that you're interested in geofencing, we can do them for you as well. If there is a specific postcode area that you want to geofence, we can do that for you, and we can put a radius around it if you specify. But if you want to draw your own, you would draw it like this. You would put your name up the top here, the name that you want the polygon to be called, and then you would save it and email it to our systems support team, and they can make it active for you. So you would need to specify which times of the day you wanted it active for, which vehicles, and whether it should be mandatory or prohibited. Okay, I'm just going to clear that one here and show you that you can bring up any of your pre-saved polygons. We've got some here. I don't think, let's have a look what we've got. We've got the Dartford crossing. Let's have a look at that one. Okay, so we've already predefined this as we have the London congestion zone. So if there's anyone out there who wants to receive alerting of the London congestion zone, then just let us know. It would be our system support email address, which will be coming up at the end of my presentation. Okay, and we can make it active for you. Okay, right, that is geofencing. So back to the menu. Okay, and we're down to the last option, which is manage custom locations. We briefly did touch on this when we did the timesheet webinar last time. Basically, if you are logged in as an administrator on your daily reports, when you click on any of the locations which are not customized, you actually have the option to customize them. So that can be done through the daily report individually. But if you want to bulk upload custom locations, if there are lots of places that you want to recognize on your reports, and it does make your reports a lot easier to read. So instead of having Station Road, Coles Hill, Birmingham, you would have Smith's company or whatever you've called that location. So if you have them in a 2-column Excel spreadsheet, what you can do is you can upload them in here. Okay, there's an upload button here. When you upload them, it actually asks you for an expiry date, which you can put way in the future. You can put in 2050 if you think that you're going to be using that location for the foreseeable future. Or if you're doing sort of temporary work there, you might want to put a time limit on it. And then all the customized locations actually show on your live tracking screen. You've probably already noticed that if you do have custom locations set up. Okay, right, so that pretty much brings me to the end of the live presentation. I'm just going to flip back to my PowerPoint screen here. Okay, right, so I hope you have all been posting questions, and we'll hopefully get to those in a moment. I'm just going to move on here. Okay, right. These are the telephone numbers and email addresses that I've been promising you throughout the presentation. So there's myself there. I do have a direct line telephone number. So if you would like to talk to me directly, if you need any help with anything that we've gone through this afternoon and you want some one-to-one tuition, then just give me a call. I am part of the customer resources team. So there are a few of us here. If I'm not available, then you can get the customer resources team on that email address and phone number. Now, for system changes, it's system support at quartix.net. So if you've drawn your polygons and you want to make them active on the geofencing, for example, or you want your administrator password sent to you, that is the email address to use. Okay. Right. Normally at the end of the webinars, we would open a poll and ask you what you would like to see next. But a close second to the configurations webinar, which you voted for last time, was our driver style reports. So we are planning on doing a webinar on this next, and it's likely to be at the beginning of July. So if you'd like to pencil that in your diaries for the 3rd of July, but we will be in touch with you before then, probably by separate email, but certainly by our newsletter as well, which we like to get out every month to you. So we'll confirm that date for you. But during that presentation, we'll be covering the driver style league table, daily driver briefing, monthly speed report, and driver style trend report. And again, we'll have a question and answer session at the end. Okay. Right, we have Jess. Jess has been standing by to answer your question, host the question and answer session. She may answer a few and I may answer a few. So are you there, Jess?
Hi, Alison, I'm here.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you ever so much for having me back again. It's been a pleasure.
Good. It's nice
We
to have
have
some
had
help.
a few questions come in, so I'm going to go through some of them. And we don't have time for all of them, but we do have your details. So if we do miss your question today, we can come back to you through email, so don't worry, we won't forget about you. So I'm going to crack on now. So the first one comes in from Sean, and it says, where does the date for the MOT come from? So Sean, what we do is you enter the date for the MOT, and then our system will register that it's a 12-month MOT, and then towards the end of it, it will bring up the date and a reminder in your weekly timesheets, your weekly summaries that we send you, and then you can also run the report that Alison showed you earlier, and that'll be able to take you through any MOTs that are due, but the data comes from where you enter it, so you need to enter the date in first to make sure that you can see any reminders and pop-ups you need to. The next question we have, Alison, comes in from Alex, and it is, can I activate geofences myself?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question, Alex, and thanks for tuning in this afternoon. The answer is we are working on it. We are working towards you being able to self-serve your own geofencing. So our development team are looking at it at the moment. Our aim is to make the process much smoother and quicker for you so that you don't have to contact our system support team. So to answer your question, we're working on it. Do keep an eye out in our newsletters because we do update you on any new system features that we release. So yeah, fingers crossed it won't be too long. We are working on it.
Excellent. Thanks ever so much, Alison.
Okay.
The next one I have comes in from Megan, and it says, is there a limit to the number of custom locations you can have?
Simple answer, no. No, you can load up as many as you want. I would suggest maybe doing some housekeeping on it now and again. Let me just see if I can log back into our live system, and I'll show you where you can do that. Okay. Right, so here, obviously you could delete them individually if you want to, but you can show expired. So as I mentioned, if you put a time limit on a job, if you think, like for instance, we've got Lidl in Newtown here, we've got a section of supermarkets for some reason, but if you were working at Lidl in Newtown and you thought that job is going to finish in September, then you could put an expiry date of it in September and then you could remove it. Yeah, the answer is you can put as many on as you want, but obviously they are going to appear on your live tracking screen. So you'll get them, all the blue dots which indicate the custom locations appearing on there. So it is a good idea sometimes to maybe sort of nip in and do a bit of housekeeping on them. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. You don't want too many blue dots on the live tracking screen. It'll inundate it. So the final question that we have time for today, Alison, is can I allow changes to be made on just one group, or does it have to be across them all? And that comes in from Tom.
Hello, Tom. Thanks for listening this afternoon. Thank you for your time. Yes, you can actually have access. So you can have administrator rights just for one group of vehicles if you want. So you don't have to have administrator rights across your fleet. So if you have a sales manager and you want him just to administer the sales vehicles, then you can just give him access to do that. It doesn't have to be across your whole fleet. So the answer is it can be group specific. It doesn't have to be across your fleet.
That's great. That's brilliant. I think that's all the questions we have time for today. But like I said earlier, if we have missed you out, don't worry, we do have your details, so we will come back to you. So I will hand over to you, Alison, to finish.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Right. Okay, right. There's just a little reminder on screen of our free fuel offer that is still ongoing. But all that remains to say really is thanks for everyone for taking the time out of your busy days this afternoon. We really appreciate it. I hope you found it useful and see you next time. Okay, thank you. Bye.